Well, I think that the thought really is, you know, if you're talking to somebody, you meet somebody, a stranger at a party, and the stories they tell you are all things that they did 15, 20 years ago. My impression is, well, okay, but what are you doing now? What are you excited about? What gets you out of bed now? You can't get out of bed and be excited about what you did 20 years ago, no matter how great it was. And I think that's why it's some artists that hit highs in their career early really struggle, because it's like, oh my God, I hit this amazing thing. I was playing arenas and now I'm back down to here, or whatever it is. I think you got to be excited about something that is going to be happening in the future. And if you do that, I think you're really energized. If you're simply talking about what happened in the past, it's kind of fun, sitting in a rocking chair, reminiscing.
Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms, and of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com. I'm Jason English, and this is Curious Goldfish. We're a community where music meets a deep, restless curiosity about the people making it. Today's guest is someone who really lives that out. Pete Muller is like 4 different people wrapped in one. He made a killing in quantitative finance. He builds world-class crosswords for the Washington Post. He's a philanthropist, and he's a talented singer-songwriter and touring musician. He just released a new album called One Last Dance, and it's his best work yet. We get into some pretty interesting territory today, like why he's trading dreaming big for dreaming small, and his newfound curiosity about the spiritual side of life. Pete also shares a story of how he helped save the iconic Power Station studio in New York City, and why he's obsessed with supporting independent music venues across America. It's a conversation about staying present even when it's hard, but also trying to look forward to something and leave those glory days of past triumphs and accolades in the dust. So now from Santa Barbara, California, here's Pete Muller. Let's dive in. Hey, Pete, I really appreciate your time. So nice to meet you.
Jason, great to meet you too.
Well, so welcome to the Curious Goldfish podcast. So this is something that I started a couple years ago when I turned 50 to get my brain kind of focused on things outside of like my normal life and work. And it's inspired by Ted Lasso. I don't know. Did you ever watch Ted Lasso?
Huge fan. Huge
Yeah.
fan. I've heard they might be doing a 4th season, but those first 3 seasons were just amazing. So heartfelt, so funny. It was something our whole family enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the perfect show. At first I was like, I hope they don't do a season 4 because it's kind of perfect. And then it's like, okay, well, I wonder where they're going to take it. But the reason I bring that up is so curiosity, right? So, be curious, not judgmental. That was part of a famous scene in the first season, right? At the garden.
That's where the Curious Goldfish comes from. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then be a goldfish, right? So, look past your mistakes and have a short-term memory, like a goldfish. So I usually wait for this question until the end, but in reading and preparing for this interview, I think in your press release, you lead with the fact that I've led a curiosity-driven life, and that you're finding more joy in the little things at this time in your life. But so I say this usually for the end, but I might as well just lead with it. I guess at this point, based on all the things that you've done, which we're going to get into, what are you most curious about today?
Oh, wow. I think at this phase in my life, um, I think I'm the most curious about the spiritual, about the transcendent, if you will. It's something I haven't really dived into. I was raised with no religious background at all. We were told we were agnostic, and I've kind of always had that belief. But there's something about the spiritual and the mystical that I haven't dived into, and music is a connection to that. It's a gateway to that.
Hmm.
So I think as I think about the next 10 years, that will be a major. I wouldn't say a major focus, maybe a major focus, but something I'm definitely going to be exploring.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So again, I think it's pretty well documented for those that know you, but for the people that may be watching this for the first time to getting to know you, I'm just going to hit on it so we can just kind of move on. I do have questions, but I'm trying to go a little bit deeper on some of this stuff. But so you've made a name for yourself in finance, quantitative finance.
I'll give you the background.
Right, you give me the background.
So I was always, I have two sides.
Yeah.
I love music. I love math. I've always been a math nerd. I had absolutely no interest in finance. I was bored by money, but I always loved games and mathematical games and figuring things out. And I was in California playing piano for a rhythmic gymnastics team. I was delaying a job I had as a computer programmer in New York, working for a company I'd worked for some in college. I just didn't want to do it. I wanted to live in California. So I looked for a programming job, and I even applied to IBM. I'm not a corporate kind of guy. And I was turned down. But I found a small company run by an econometrics professor from Cal Berkeley, a guy named Bar Rosenberg, and they were looking for a programmer. And I came in and started doing some programming for them. And I realized that the finance they were doing was all math, and that I was really good at it. And I got curious, and I learned it, and I learned it deeply. Within a couple of years, I was giving talks at their conferences to clients and writing articles, and I just got into it. And then a few friends of mine at the company and I got into poker. We got really, into poker competitively, and decided that we wanted to combine that knowledge of poker and finance, and maybe start a little hedge fund inside the company. And we pitched it very very badly to management. They said, no, we don't do that. And when Morgan Stanley came looking for somebody to do what I was already doing, which is writing articles and talking at conferences, I pitched it a little bit better to them, and they said, sure, we'll let you start a group to do this. And that was in the 90s. I started the group. Knock on wood, it was very successful. It was more successful than I ever dreamed of. It was also harder than I ever dreamed of. So I was incredibly obsessive. I put music to the side for maybe 6 years, mostly. And while even though I was very successful, I burned out because I didn't really feed that side of myself. So I left. I cut a deal to leave and really pursue music. I started writing because I went through a heartbreak, a breakup at that time, and my heart was broken. I started writing, and then I managed to kind of combine the two things. And then in 2012, there was a rule that said Morgan Stanley couldn't have groups like mine, and we spun out and became independent. And so now I'm still in charge of the group, maybe closer to an executive chairman than president and CEO, although that's still my title, and still pursuing music uh, passionately. Uh, so I have both sides.
It's not rare for people to pursue their curiosities and their passions, but it's kind of rare for somebody to be so successful in a handful of different ones, right? Usually it's like, okay, the one thing, and then you kind of have your side gigs or your hobbies and things like that. So congrats on that. What a life.
Uh,
That's amazing.
it's
Um,
it's fun and challenging, and you know it's not about what you've accomplished, right? It's always about what you can be building or growing, or how you're learning. That's, I think, what keeps people alive and young. So that's my goal.
so you have a new album out called One Last Dance, which I have a couple questions about that specifically, but I think what's interesting and what I want to start with is sort of this theme of past, present, and future with you. And there's a
Okay.
few angles to that I want to get into. So first off, you may have mentioned, I know you mentioned poker, but another part of your life is crossword puzzles,
That's
right?
true. I do that.
And by the way, there was a
Uh,
great documentary called Wordplay about 20 years ago. Did you ever see that?
I did. I know Will Shortz pretty well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
great. That was a great
I'm
documentary.
also in that community. Yeah, I started. I've always loved doing crossword puzzles, and I started
Yeah.
creating them a number of years ago. I published a whole bunch in the New York Times, and I guess it was probably 12 years ago. I started my own monthly music crossword, which appears in the Washington Post. And the answer every month is a song or a band, and my band will cover whatever the answer is. So sometimes that makes us need to learn unusual songs, because the answer to the crossword might be something that we never would have learned except for that. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun. And I have a few thousand people that love doing it from my own site. And the post is going through a change on their crossword side, so they haven't had it up for a little bit, but hopefully they get it back soon. But usually we get 10,000 people or so a month doing it on the post. So it's a fun side hobby.
And the documentary, what was kind of surprising too is I think the Indigo Girls played had a cameo in that. And I always remember that as like, okay, again, two sides of the brain or whatever. It's just really interesting. And I guess what I want to my first kind of question about that is if you consider crossword puzzles sort of engineered ambiguity, because you don't want to be you don't want it to be too easy, right? And you don't want it to be impossible. But this notion of like it needs to be ambiguous for it to be somewhat challenging and enjoyable. And then you translate that to your life in quant finance, which has to be the opposite of ambiguous. Like you
Oh,
need to be as
I
precise as possible. I guess how do you balance that?
oh I don't know if I would agree with that analogy. I would put it very differently. When you're building a crossword, I mean, the answer is not ambiguous. There is an answer. But what you want to create is, and this is, I'm paraphrasing Mike Schenk, who's the editor of the Wall Street Journal crossword and a fabulous constructor himself. He says he wants to create a battle with the solver, where the solver struggles mightily and eventually triumphs over him. So the puzzle is hard, but there is no ambiguity in a crossword. There is one answer. Interestingly, when you're doing modeling in quantitative finance, there isn't one answer. Nobody's going to tell you. Nobody's going to be able to predict what the stock price of or the S&P 500 will be tomorrow precisely. You might, if you spend a lot of time and have a good model, have a little bit of an edge in being able to predict it with a lot of variability. So the statistics are good. The models can change, but there is no such thing as a correct model. You're always trying to build a model that forecasts a little bit better, but you don't need much forecasting edge in order um, to to have something that works. But it's very hard to find that type of an edge. It's a little like card counting in blackjack, if you're familiar with that, where you keep track of how many face cards are left in the deck, and if there are more than the average amount of face cards, you have a slight advantage. But that doesn't mean you're going to win the next hand. That means you maybe have a 51% chance of winning the next hand.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's good. Um, and when I talked about the ambiguity of the puzzle, it's in the clues, right? There's like it leads you to the right answer, right? But there's got to be some element of I don't know if it's suspense or some element of like nuance. Otherwise, it'd just be I don't know, pretty straightforward. But that's where I was going with that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I mean, so there are a lot of clues that might have more than one answer with
Yeah,
that number of letters, but there's only one
final
answer that
answer.
would fit with the crossing ones.
Yeah,
So I see. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, so you mentioned poker again. I guess my other question about you and like you're just really interesting. It's more than a duality. Like you've got so many things going on. So in poker, especially high stakes poker, I mean, isn't that all about emotional control and being as even keel as possible? And sort of compare that to, you mentioned a breakup and then you meant, songwriting. I mean, isn't songwriting about being completely like maxing out emotion, maxing out vulnerability? So it's like again
I
this whole up and down and kind of back and forth. It's like how do you go from one to the other?
That's a great contrast. I actually don't play poker competitively and haven't for a very long time. And I completely agree. It is so important when you're playing poker to have emotional discipline. Um, I would phrase it slightly differently, but although I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. You need to be aware of your emotions and ideally the emotions of the other players, but not react based on them. Right.
Got it.
But the best poker players these days are now, machine learning bots. They've figured out that the best players in the world cannot beat the best computer algorithm in heads up, no limit hold'em. And in fact, The algorithms have gotten so good that the professionals are learning from them and adjusting their games to be similar to that. So emotional control is really important there. And I would much rather be uh, in situations where I don't have to, worry about that all the time. I still find poker really fun, but you
Sure.
need that discipline.
Back to this notion of like, past, present, and future. You've been pretty vocal about your love of surfing, yoga, and things like that, which I think require a person to be completely present in the present moment, right? And then when you look at again what you do, which is you mentioned forecasting on the finance side, trying to be again as precise as possible in order to maximize returns. Then your album, though, there's a lot about like the peril of nostalgia and the danger of looking back. So I'm just again, it's back to this thing as like, okay, doing yoga. If you think about the future or worry about the past, you're going to get a move wrong. If you're on the surfboard, same thing. Like if you're not feeling the flow, you're off the board. But here you are talking about the past in your songs, and then the future, with what you've done. I just think it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, I do think that the through line, if you will, for all of them is to be present. So you may be referring to one of the songs on the album called Moments,
Hmm.
um, which is about the danger of nostalgia. It's are you living in the moment or in the memory? And the message of the song is to live in the present, if you will. It starts out with a vignette of a older man hiking and just running into him with a chance encounter and talking about life and a reminder that the only thing that we have is the present moment. That's kind of spiritual teaching, if you will. That's the center of yoga. That's the truth of, if you're surfing or snowboarding or doing anything, if you're there and present, that's what it's about. If you're there and present in conversation, all we have is this moment. We're connecting right here. We're talking about stuff. I think that's when one feels the most alive, the
Yeah.
most energized.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of present day, like you mentioned spirituality when I asked you about being curious, but what do you try to sit in today and be present in at this stage in your life? You know?
So I'd say the moments, I do yoga every day. I have a yoga practice where I try to be centered and present, and I also exercise every day, and similarly try to just be aware and energized. But I'd say when I'm sitting at the piano and either composing or practicing, uh, you can't create music that touches people or that just people are going to really enjoy without being fully in.
Mm.
And that's why I do music. It lifts my spirit up. And if you see me playing or performing, I just have this smile on my face because I'm just so happy being able to do it. It's been so much fun growing as a writer, growing as a performer, player, singer. It's sometimes a little incongruous because if I'm singing a song about being sad and being very open and vulnerable, and there's songs like that in this current album, that's struggles that I've had. I'm playing these songs which are sad, but there's a smile on my face, and that could be a little weird sometimes. But the reality is true is that I'm remembering that emotion, but I'm also enjoying the fact that I'm playing on stage and connecting with the audience.
Yeah. And you mentioned the song moments. Why are you encouraging people maybe not to spend too much mind space and head space in the past? Is it about kind of relishing in the moment, the present moment's more important?
Well, I think that the thought really is, if you're talking to somebody, you meet somebody, a stranger at a party, and the stories they tell you are all things that they did 15, 20 years ago. My impression is, well, okay, well, what are you doing now? What are you excited about? What gets you out of bed now? You can't get out of bed and be excited about what you did 20 years ago, no matter how great it was. And I think that's why it's some artists that hit highs in their career early really struggle, because it's like, oh my god, I hit this amazing thing. I was playing arenas and now I'm back down to here or whatever it is. I think you got to be excited about something, that is going to be happening in the future. And if you do that, I think you're really energized. If you're simply talking about what happened in the past, it's kind of fun, sitting in a rocking chair, reminiscing. But it's a different life. And as I get older, I want to be energized and curious and doing new stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the glory days, right? Like, high school football state championship and things like that.
Exactly. Bruce Springsteen sang it a lot better than I did. It was a really great song, but
Yeah.
it's the same sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah. Same sentiment. Well, again, whether it was intentional or unintentional or a coincidence, but again, when I turned 50, it's one of the best years of my life. Because I had a renewed sense of creativity, a renewed sense of pursuing things. And maybe it's because I don't know, like your mind and your soul realize time is ticking, but I'm relishing and appreciating things now than I more than I ever did when I was 29, or 26.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would say that, every day gets sweeter as you get older, if you will.
Yeah.
You just appreciate the fact that you're alive.
Yeah.
And
No, that's great. Um,
yeah,
so we talked about moments. The other one I want to ask you too is just again, the general sentiment in the world is to dream big. And you've got a song called Dream Small, which is I think is about redefining success and sort of level setting perspective on what really matters. So I think is that I know I think it's about the character is a woman, I think, but is that autobiographical?
that's very perceptive.
Yeah.
I actually wrote that song, about me, and it was there's this thing called the Antisocial Camp, which is a gathering of different songwriters and producers that happens every summer in New York for 5 days. They pair you with random people, and you have 3 hours to write and record a song. And I was just, and I'll tell you the motivation behind it, but it was about me, and we actually did it in 3 hours and wrote it about from an individual perspective. And I thought about it, and it's like it just sounded a little too. I don't know if boasty is the word, or self-involved. Like, hey, I did all these great things, and now I just want to do small things. So I'm like, let me just make up a character. So I made up an actress who kind of had a great, fantastic, larger than life life, and just kind of wasn't happy about it, and decided to take a step back. And I think that it worked a lot better there. And I find for me, I'm lucky enough because of what I did in finance, because of the group that I have. And I mean, I work with some incredibly smart, incredibly wonderful people. So, having resources to do anything I want is, you know, it's there, and I've done some pretty cool, spectacular things. But I find the moments that I love the most are the smaller moments. It's just playing ping pong with my son, or playing a board game with some friends, or composing a song with a friend. Things that don't require money, that are just available, walking in nature and kind of appreciating the beauty of some flowers or whatever it is, that spiritually, that lifts me up much higher than anything that might be crazy and expensive. So and it's not like I don't like to do fabulous things too, but it was just this urging, and I guess it was the beginning of my journey towards the more spiritual and the more connected. And to me, I've always calibrated how to make choices by what gives me energy, and if that's the North Star for me, is this energizing? Is this, am I open? Am I loving? Am I my best self by okay, let me do more of that. Oh, okay. Am I closing up? Is there something wrong here? Okay. What's the resistance about? But okay, maybe I'm just feeling numb here. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't do that. It's an opening up for me. And I realize that the opening up might not be about doing bigger, larger things. It's about doing smaller things. That's the genesis. We had, this Italian firm do a really great cutout paper, what's it? Stop action photography video of that song, which came out great. That's one of the fun things for the album, isn't it? Getting to make very different videos for each of the songs.
Right. Right. Well, that's interesting. So you mentioned this notion of like you do have access to resources, that I think many people may not. and this I ask this question with all due respect, but when you're talking and when I think about the people that work for you, I think of Undercover Boss, right? And then, but I think of it in the lens through the lens of music. And where I'm going with that is there's a lot of people I talk to, for this thing and who I've met that, have 20 followers on Spotify, and they'll go and they'll play for 2 hours in front of four people, right? And they've got their tip bucket with their QR code, and they may see $7, at the end of the night, right? And I'm just thinking about, from again, this is like from like having street cred, because you do have access to like resources that most of these independent artists, would never. Have you thought about like, okay, what would it be like if I actually went kind of undercover and lived the life of and I think you've busked, right? But like of a troubadour and hop the trains and, live like so many struggling musicians do,
It's a fair question. I have busked in New York City subways,
Yeah.
um, and typically when I do my shows, I don't. I mean, I want people to judge me on my music, so I don't really tell the story. And so I'm the opening act. If I'm traveling around the country, I'll open for my friend Livingston Taylor. I'll get on
Mm.
stage, and it's a great audience, but they don't know who I am. They just know that I'm playing a 30 or 45-minute set before the guy that they came to see. Typically, if there's only one, if there's a green room in the venue, great. But typically I'll be changing in the bathroom. And yeah, so I can travel a little more comfortably when I get there. If people are buying CDs, I give 100% of whatever people give me to a music charity that I started. So I give it all away. But I travel better, right? So
Right.
logistics, that makes it a lot easier, and I have a crew that can help me. But at the end of the day, when I'm on stage, when I'm playing the songs, it's the same as that, person that is playing for tips.
Sure.
They don't have to run a company too, so um, but it's like, how good is the song? How good is your connection to the audience? Are you,
Right.
are they identifying with the emotion that you're giving them? And that that is the challenge, and that's what keeps me alive. I remember when I made my third record with a friend of mine who's no longer here, a guy named Rick DePafi, and he figured out something about my background. He said to me, Pete, there's this guy that hires the best musicians in the world, and he goes around and opens for big rock bands, and he flies them around on his jet, and that's how he gets to open for them and play with his rock band in these arenas. But he gets no respect, no credit. And I'm like, that is the opposite of who I want to be. I
Yeah.
want to play a song and have people go, wow, wow, that's amazing. And then, some people know something about my other background, but if they don't know who I am, they go, "Wait a second, no, that can't you're not the same person."
Right.
Right? And,
Exactly.
so that it is all about the music and the
Mm.
creating the music and how you touch people, and the journey. I mean, for me, the journey of continuing to get better has been such a great growth part of my life. It's been so fun.
No, that's great. Yeah. Good answer. It's just interesting, right? Just how everybody kind of comes to the table with their stuff, but like no judgment. And like I said, One Last Dance is great. It's a great listen. I guess so. Where do you think you are as an artist today, and where do you want to be?
Hmm. So my goal when I first started doing this was to be able to play a show for 100 to 200 people in 20 different cities across the country, headlining. Um, where just a quiet listening room where I'm playing my original stuff. I mean, it's the challenge there is people people go see cover bands, and artists, well-known artists that in the folk world have trouble doing that a little bit. So it feels like it was an ambitious goal. I feel like I'm on the path towards being able to do that. My albums are getting some good reviews. the NPR came out because the album was released November 14th, and they have this top 10 Americana albums of the week thing, and we made that. I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, so it's fun, and um, uh, I want to keep getting better. I want to keep growing. I want to touch people more. Steve Martin has this quote about how to succeed in, I guess, comedy or music. He plays both. He does both, and it's just be so good that they can't ignore you.
Hmm.
Um, so in the coming year, I plan to put out a solo cover album, maybe a cover album with my band as well, and then get close to another original album. Um, this one was really really fun. We ended up. Uh, uh, I don't know. I can tell you the story of how we made One Last Dance if you want. If you want,
Yeah, yeah. Love that.
but I had to be in England, and it turns out that Peter Gabriel's studio called Real World was available for a week, and so brought the band over, and we, the idea was we were just going to workshop stuff, but we met their engineer, a woman named Katie May,
Hmm.
who just won a Grammy. I think she's 27. She's the head engineer there. She's been doing this since she was 16, and we were just totally simpatico with her. She was amazing, and so we ended up uh, recording 10 songs that week that basically became the album, and it was just this wonderful time when we were in the middle of nowhere in England, and just you know writing, recording. It was fantastic. And so I hope to have another week with the band somewhere this coming year. Uh, Probably closer to home, but we'll see. But that was really fun. And then one of the things that was really great for this record was I got my friend Allison Russell to sing a duet with me on the lead
Hmm.
track. I originally recorded it just myself, but then I was like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And she graciously agreed, and we had a lot of fun doing it. She's an amazing artist, and a real sweetheart. So that was really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, congrats on everything. And I guess what's been the prevailing theme of the feedback so far for for people that have heard it or maybe have seen you play in person.
The thing that I've gotten for this record is that it's clearly my best work to date.
Mm,
Just something that I felt on each of the last few albums. I felt that on the last album, More Time, which I made in Memphis with Matt Ross Spang. But people have said, like, okay, this is the one. I'm working with a new friend who produces um, theater and some musicals and things like that, with the idea of uh, uh, creating a one man show where I somehow weave my story
mm,
into the songs and tell the story on stage. Yeah, there was something called The Lion that she did, a singer-songwriter, guitar player that did this, and she shared it with me. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe we can do something like that. But we went through my whole catalog because this is my seventh record, and you're like, okay, what are the songs in the past that we can use and all that? And she was like, you know what? I think you should just use songs from this record and do new ones to create this show. And I don't know if that's exactly what we'll do. Maybe we'll take a few of the other ones from the past, but
yeah.
it'll be fun to just keep on creating. So that people have really liked this record,
Mm.
you know. So
So I do want to ask about the things that again another part of your life. So you do give back and you do support the arts in so many different ways. But there's the Live Music Society, and then you were part of the crew that revived a really famous studio in New York. So I guess talk about that, and then again, hate to go back to like the finance bit, but like finance is all about return on investment. When you do put money and time towards things that you care about, like is there a way to quantify and measure the return and then like the cultural impact? Or is it like, hey, no, like I believe in these guys and believe what they're doing. Like, they can have my money and my time.
oh, it's much more than that, right? I mean, you want to align incentives, and philanthropy is hard because you want to motivate people to do really great things. And capitalism is actually really good at that, but it's hard to do capitalism with philanthropy. But if you can figure out a way to align incentives, you have a step towards that. So I'll talk about the two things that you're mentioning. The first one, this is my friend Rick Tapafi, who told me, don't be the asshole who, you know, buys his way into arena touring. He worked with me on my third album and really helped me take a huge leap forward.
Hmm.
And at the end of it, I was like, he built Roseanne Cash's home studio with John Leventhal, and I said, you know what, I'd love to get a place in New York, a studio apartment, and maybe make that a studio for me. And he could build it. And he's like, great. And so we started looking, and then he came to me because we had recorded at a place called Avatar, which previously had been called Power Station. It's an amazing recording studio. It's kind of on par with Abbey Road. It's probably one of the top 10, 20 studios in the world. And we had done a little of our recording there. And he told me, Pete, I just heard that Avatar is going to be sold and they're going to turn it into condos. And I said, oh, that's too bad. And he said, well, I had this dream that maybe you kind of, with your resources, could buy the building or something and kind of, maybe put your studio there and maybe get, because I was on the board of the Berklee School of Music, maybe get Berklee to come down there and do, and now I spent some time in this place. Was full of asbestos. It's just it's very tough to make money in the studio business. And this Japanese guy had owned it for 20 years, and it was a labor of love. And he finally was throwing in the towel. They had leaks on the fourth floor, and the way they dealt with the leak, it was like the movie Brazil. They would ductwork all the water all the way down to the ground through the different floors. I mean, it was a disaster. And so when Rick mentioned that, I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. This is crazy. No, I'm not going to do this. Well, long story short, I ended up doing it. I just realized, okay, well, what am I going to use my money for if not to kind of do this? We went to New York City, and it was actually one meeting, and it was really fortuitous because Bloomberg at the time had just created a new department, and that added music as one of the things they wanted to do. And I said, hey, you can do two things: save an iconic studio and get Berklee to New York City. You guys kick in some money, I'll kick in the rest. What do you
That's
say?
cool.
And they said, great. It took 5 years
Mm.
to build it. A friend of mine named, a good friend who became a friend through the process, Stephen Weber, spearheaded it, and just made it happen. And it was challenging, and now it's thriving, and I have a studio there too. So it worked out brilliantly. And I guess the other one, when I first started getting more serious, my wife at the time said to me, hey, if you're getting really serious about music, you should go play in front of strangers, as opposed to just playing for your friends in Santa Barbara and New York. And it's like, yeah, you got a point there. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good
uh,
point.
so I signed up for an opening tour for a fellow named Stephen Kellogg, who's been doing this for a very long time and has a nice following. And we did an agreement where I opened for him for 20 consecutive days. And we went around the country playing for some of these venues that I want to eventually come back and headline. And I was blown away, Jason, by how amazing these places were.
Mm.
The people that owned them truly were devoted to music, wanted to create a place that traveling singer-songwriters could just, come, have a great meal, maybe shower, maybe put them up in a bed if need be. They would support them. They would treat their staff really well. They would, do this thing for the community where people could come and listen to wonderful songs. And they were not making that much money. They were struggling because it's very, very hard to be a small independent music venue. So I just thought, what if I started a charity that could help these venues out? I put up the capital, and I talked a number of my friends into joining and helping evaluate. Um, we started right before the pandemic, and it was really fortuitous because we had funding, and as soon as the pandemic happened, obviously live music venues were just completely threatened. And there was some money that came from the government through NEVA and all that, but that took a little while. But we managed to save quite a few places initially. And Live Music Society is still going strong. We give away, 7 figures a year, and to probably 150 clubs around the country now. It's worked out great. We've made a lot of friends. We've helped a lot of places. They apply for grants. I'm not involved at all in the evaluation process. We have a bunch of volunteers that come and go, okay, does this make sense? And, if you have a venue that's, no more than 200 or 300 cap, and you have music most of the time, and you pay your musicians well, we will please apply. We'll be happy to support you.
That's
Um,
incredible.
that's been really, really fun. And you asked me about return on investment. I mean, it's the psychic return is everything. You know, you just that's the main thing. And it
Yeah.
was so fun in the beginning days because people didn't know about us. You know, the head of the society um, would call up and say, "Hey, we've got some free money for you. All you have to do is apply." You know, click. Never mind. No, really, this is not a scam. We're actually trying to be helpful. So that doesn't happen anymore. But it's yeah, it's just a joy, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe, if I can make the world a little bit of a better place with my resources, what else am I going to spend my money on?
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. Well, congrats on that. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. There's something different, there's something, I don't know, magical about live music, and again, it doesn't matter if it's 100,000 people in a big football stadium or if it's, 10 people at a local tavern, and someone's bearing their soul and playing original music. There's nothing better. So thanks for that support. And
Exactly.
by the
No,
way, like, I don't know, have you been through Atlanta at all? Like, there's Eddie's Attic, there's
I've
Red
played Eddie's
Clay,
Attic
there's so many good venues here.
2 or 3 times. We played Eddie's Attic. Love
Yeah,
Eddie's Attic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully we can see you back there sometime soon. But well, Pete, happy holidays and really appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing all the insights and congrats on the new album.
Oh, Jason, it's been a pleasure doing this and a lot of fun. So thanks much.
All right, man. Thank you.